My buddy Peter Schweizer is a tremendous investigative journalist. He calls him as he sees him, which I'm about to prove. His latest great book was Profiles in Corruption, which you can get at Amazon.com, a perfect gift this time of the season. He was the first to interview Tony Bobolinsky, and he really has helped expose the Biden crime family all the way up to Joe Biden. Peter, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Mark. Great to be with you as always.
But there's a lot more to China's reach, isn't there? And I want to stay on this Joe Biden issue, too. But I want the public to understand. You have Mitch McConnell, who's, he gave a concession speech for the President of the United States from the Florida Senate. He's constantly cutting deals. My own view is it really is time to get a more vibrant, fresh face in that position, somebody who can communicate well and clearly with the American people, more than a wheeler dealer. What McConnell's done on judges, really any competent or effective leader could do. But as I recall, Mitch McConnell or Mitch McConnell's family has its own issues when it comes to communist China. Am I right or am I wrong?
You're absolutely right, Mark. Look, the Bidens are the most egregious examples of corruption involving the Chinese government. But honestly, McConnell and his wife, Elaine Chao, are not that far behind. Elaine Chao's family controls a shipping company called the Foremost Group that they established back in the 1980s. The business really took off, Mark, beginning in the 1990s and then the 2000s when they struck a deal with the government of China. So you have a situation today where this company, which is the Chao family business, of which Mitch McConnell is a beneficiary, it's a shipping business where all the new ships are financed by the Chinese government. The ships are built by Chinese state-owned shipbuilding companies. They are manned by crews arranged by the Chinese government, and more than 90% of their business is shipping the goods of Chinese state-owned companies around the world. Suffice it to say, if Mitch McConnell were to ever do anything as a U.S. Senator or as a Senate Majority Leader that would cause offense in Beijing, they could destroy their business tomorrow. It's a
hold on. Let me understand this. Let me understand this. You have a shipping company that effectively is controlled by the communist Chinese. That's what you're telling me.
Correct.
And the shipping company that's effectively controlled by the Chinese is owned by the Chao family?
Yes, it's owned by the Chao family.
100%?
Yeah, 100% owned by the Chao family. That's the main relationship that exists. But you also have to keep in mind that, Elaine Chao's father has deep ties in mainland China that go beyond the shipping business. And in fact, Elaine Chao's sister, Angela Chao, is on the board of directors of the Bank of China. Now, this is the inner sanctum of the Chinese government's financial apparatus. It's a state-controlled bank. It does the bidding for the Chinese government. And there are precious few, by my count, only 2 foreign nationals that sit on the board of directors of the Bank of China.
So this is McConnell's, hold on now, this is McConnell's sister-in-law?
Yeah, McConnell's sister-in-law, that's right.
Sits on basically the board of this communist bank.
Yes, exactly. So the point is, Mark, these are deep, abiding relationships. These are relationships of trust. This is not something that just emerged by happenstance. The relationship between the Chinese government and the McConnell-Chao family really came to fruition in 1993. This was only 4 years after the Tiananmen Square massacre, when Mitch McConnell became only the second U.S. senator to visit Beijing, China. He visited there at the request of the Chinese government, who financed the trip. He visited Beijing with his wife, Elaine Chao. They had been married for only a few years, and with Elaine Chao's father. After that meeting, the Chao family was essentially in business with the Chinese government, and that business has grown and made the family very wealthy. They've given multi-million-dollar gifts to Mitch McConnell himself, and they benefited.
All right, hold on. Who gave gifts to Mitch McConnell?
Elaine Chao's family, her father, gave a gift to Mitch McConnell between $5 and $25 million about 10 or 12 years ago. And this came as a result of the profits they got from their business with the Chinese government.
You know, you wrote about this some time ago. We talked about it some time ago. I had forgotten about most of this. You're reminding me about this. And this is a problem for the Republican Party, isn't it?
It is. It's a huge
Potentially.
problem. I mean, yes, exactly. I mean, look, the Biden stuff with China is absolutely scandalous.
I agree.
But this is a problem too, and this is part of what China's strategy is. They've used it in Australia and New Zealand, Mark, which is, basically they say we don't need to compete with these foreign countries. All we need to do is effectively decapitate their political leadership by buying them off, giving them sweetheart deals, enriching them so they won't challenge us. And that's the situation that we have, certainly with Joe Biden, and the situation that I think, unfortunately, we also have with Mitch McConnell.
Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell famously get along pretty well together, is my understanding. Do you hear that, too?
Yes. They both served in the Senate for, basically 30 years. They served in the Senate together. They have a cozy relationship. They have common views on China. I would say that Joe Biden is probably a little softer than Mitch McConnell, but there's not a lot of difference there. And the fear here, Mark, is that all of the progress that Donald Trump has made in challenging China's trade policies, their tech transfer policies, their military adventurism into the South China Sea, all of that is going to be erased if we have a leadership in Washington that has been enriched.
Can I hold you over? The music means I have a hard break. Can I hold you over, Peter?
Sure, I'd be glad to, Mark.
All right, I appreciate it. Peter Schweizer, an expert on all things corrupt on Capitol Hill. We'll be right back. With our man, Peter Schweizer, Profiles in Corruption. I'm sorry I interrupted a dinner you're attending, but I really do appreciate the fact that you're assisting us here. So I want you to summarize. So basically, through marriage, McConnell, he marries into this family. This family has a sweetheart deal with the communist Chinese regime. The sweetheart deal basically has given them, I'll call it a license in effect, to be this. Is it the only freight company that they use, or are there others?
Well, it's one of the main freight companies that they use, and the bottom line is, more than 90% of the business that the McConnell Chao shipping company does is with the communist Chinese government. So if they decided tomorrow they didn't like something Mitch McConnell did, and of course Mitch McConnell is aware of this, they could literally destroy the business. The ships would go away, the financing of the ships, the crews, the contracts, everything.
Okay. Have you looked at, or has anybody looked at Mitch McConnell's record in the United States Senate? Has he really joined in or led any of these efforts to control what China has done in terms of taking over our businesses, various industries and supply chains and so forth?
Well, he's been pretty weak, Mark. After the Tiananmen Square massacre back in '89, he was very staunch. I mean, he was a very staunch anti-communist. But that started to change, particularly around the time of the transfer of Hong Kong in 1997 and 1998. So today his record is really weak on China. I mean, he'll occasionally say something, that he's not happy with what the Chinese have done in the South China Sea. But China doesn't have a problem with what politicians say. It's a question of what they do. And in that regard, Mitch McConnell has been profoundly weak on China. And that's, I think, the bottom line. If the United States is going to deal with the chief rival that we have on the global stage today, it's not Russia, it's not Iran, it's China. We need to have leaders that are going to be clear-headed and that don't have, incentives or financial entanglements with that rival power. And that's the problem that you have with Mitch McConnell and that you have with Elaine Chao. And this needs to be something that voters are aware of, but it needs to be also something that the McConnell-Chao family is prepared to be honest about, not to pretend that it doesn't matter. They need to be honest with voters about it, and they frankly need to do something about it so they don't have this vulnerability where literally the Chinese Communist Party has them over a barrel.
I've been calling for a special counsel, trying to push that, trying to see if it'll gain steam in the Biden matter and so forth. I don't believe Mitch McConnell has commented on that, as best as I can tell. Have you heard him commenting on this?
I have not. And look, here's what I would say, Mark. The McConnell situation is really bad, but you could at least argue that before they, made their deal with the Chinese government, they had a legitimate business. They had a shipping business. It was small. It was not very effective. And they made the deal with the Chinese and they become rich. In the case of the Bidens, you don't even have a legitimate underlying business. They're not.
Yeah, it's pretty black and white, isn't it?
Exactly. But you're exactly right to point out Mitch McConnell has not talked about the China threat. He has certainly not talked about the Biden's commercial ties to the Chinese, because what is he going to say? If he says something about it, it's going to draw attention to his commercial ties with the Chinese regime, which is, by the way, the same reason that Dianne Feinstein, Nancy Pelosi, a number of other people on Capitol Hill won't say something about it, aside from the political implications, because Dianne Feinstein and Nancy Pelosi, their husbands have deep financial ties on mainland China. So this is a huge problem, Mark. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to address the Biden issue, not just because of the politics, but because they themselves have deals that also put them in the spotlight if they bring attention to this matter.
There's more of a reason we need a special counsel to investigate the Bidens, including Joe Biden, frankly. There's no way he won't appoint an attorney. They're attorneys general. People attack Bill Barr. You look at Eric Holder, Sally Yates. They're all political hacks. They're all in the back pocket of their political mentors. I mean, they'll kill this in 2 seconds. They'll just quietly kill it. They'll get rid of the U.S. attorneys. They'll do all those things. That's why a special counsel must be appointed, certainly before, allegedly, presumably, Biden steps up. No question about that, because otherwise we won't get to the bottom of this. And isn't that shocking, really? Isn't that shocking, Peter, in a so-called advanced republic like this, where we're supposed to believe in law and order, that in many cases we don't have law and order?
Yeah, I mean, we have a two-tiered system of justice today, which is that a candidate or an official like Donald Trump is subject to investigation based on flimsy evidence. I mean, remember, this was all kicked off by a dossier that wasn't sourced, that presented no evidence, that was taken as writ, that launched this massive investigation of President Donald Trump. What we have in this case is nobody's disputing the fact that Hunter Biden got lucrative deals from the Chinese government that he was not qualified to get. They occurred while his father was the point person on Obama administration policy towards China. So you actually have a transference of money. You never had anything of the sort relating to Donald Trump and Russia. And yet, you investigate one, you spend years investigating something that has nothing there. On the other hand, something that actually has the exchange of millions of dollars from Chinese government entities to the Biden family, and we're told there's nothing to investigate here. This is one of the reasons I think, Mark, people are so angry at what happens in Washington. They understand you're going to criticize the politicians they like, you're going to criticize the leaders you like. That's fine. All we ask for is an equal standard for both sides of the aisle, and we are very, very far from that in America today.
Yeah, but we don't have a functioning media. In some ways, we don't have a functioning justice system. Then you expose Mitch McConnell. That's why if there's not a special counsel point in this case, we're never going to get to the bottom of it, and we need to get to the bottom of it. You have fools like Jake Tapper on CNN, on his Sunday program, never even mentions Hunter Biden, because he's in the tank. He's a liberal Democrat. I want to ask you a few more questions very quickly.
Sure.
Has CNN ever invited you on to discuss this topic, Hunter Biden and Joe Biden?
Never once, Mark. Never once.
Has MSNBC?
Never once.
How about Meet the Press?
Unfortunately, no.
How about George Stephanopoulos on his Sunday show?
No, never been on to talk about the Bidens.
How about the Washington Post? Have they ever done an expose on this subject?
No. The only thing they've done, Mark, is they did a fact check, but they used the Biden's attorney as their source for the fact check. So the short answer is no. I've never.
How about the New York Times? Did they ever do an expose on what you've written and said?
No, never.
CBS?
No.
I mean, this is the problem we have here. You wrote a book. You have it footnoted. The details are provided. You're an investigative reporter. You have a group that investigates. You're well known. You have enormous integrity. Nobody's ever been able to shoot holes through things that you have said. You've given these reporters, so-called, all the breadcrumbs they need to follow, and they don't want to follow any of them, and they're not going to follow any of them. And so we have a dysfunctional media that's in the tank. We have a dysfunctional legal system in some respects, and I don't see Mitch McConnell leading the battle here. So if we don't have a special counsel, we're not going to get to the bottom of this. Do you agree?
I agree 100%, Mark. And here's the thing. Look, the book, when it came out with these revelations, hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. So the point is, they didn't miss the book. The media likes to talk about the fact that they speak truth to power. What we all know now is that they speak certain truths to certain people in power. And that's the situation we have in America. And it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy that we're in a state of America today where you don't want, you don't have a media that is prepared to do basic investigations. They have a lack of curiosity and a lack of interest in the financial dealings of a man who could be the most powerful man in the world. They just are not interested in looking into it, and it's remarkable to me.
It's the same way, honestly, that they didn't want to address his obvious mental issues or any of this stuff. The fact that he was tight with white Southern segregationists for a good 7-8 years, and the things that he said, they never reported on that. And I can go on and on and on. This man has been fully protected by the media, and he still is. Peter Schweizer, the book is Profiles in Corruption. I want to thank you very, very much. God bless you, my friend.
Thank you, Mark. Always a pleasure.
He is terrific. He really